Let's start with the talking point from Jeddah, if we could. And I'll come back to you on this one, Karun, because obviously you covered it off the Sky Pad. But that was the 5-second penalty given to Max Verstappen for leaving the track and gaining that lasting advantage. According to the latest driver's standard guidelines, just give you the update on that.
Was this penalty fair or F1 politics at play? Check this video out and see for yourself.
The car overtaking on the inside must have its front axle at least alongside the mirror of the other car, no later than the apex of the corner. It must be driven in a safe and controlled manner from entry to exit, and it must be able to make the corner within track limits. Because Oscar Piastri met all three of these criteria, the 5-second penalty was given to Max Verstappen. It was mitigated down because it was on the first lap. But I think most people, and even you at the Sky Pad, thought that it pretty much a slam dunk.
Yeah, I think so. The reality is, and I asked Oscar this, right, which was any driver on the outside at that point was going to do what Max did. You take a punt and you roll the dice and you try and argue the toss later. And I said to Oscar after the race, did you expect Max to go straight? And he went, yeah, I think. But the point was actually Oscar had done the donkey work off the launch. He is not to 200 kilometers per hour time, was 0.3 quicker than Max. And that's where he had pulled up to that point, Simon, which you crucially mentioned. The front axle was more than ahead of the mirror of Max's car, which meant that he had the right to that first apex. And that's where the race was won. That launch, that first 0 to 200, that's where the race was won for Oscar, really. So, yeah, I think it was right, the penalty in the end.
Bernie, do you agree with him?
Yeah. Max Verstappen's ability to read a race and execute under pressure is unmatched, but this penalty raises important questions about consistency. He was clearly alongside Oscar, and while Oscar's launch was fast, Max wasn't at fault for going for the move. In a sport where margins are so thin, sometimes you have to take those early risks. The penalty, especially for a move that didn't result in any contact or dangerous behavior, feels excessive and could set a worrying precedent for future racing decisions. This is F1. We should embrace bold driving, not penalize it.
I think the penalty was right, as in it was given to the right driver, and I think that's how it should have happened. I question the 5 seconds. So I know that it was reduced because it's lap one, but I think this is maybe the second week in a row where we've had someone get a 5-second penalty. Norris the week before for the start being too forward in the start box. But, was 5 seconds enough to mitigate the advantage of where he started from? And equally here, if Verstappen's car had been fast enough to drive off into the distance, the 5 seconds wasn't equivalent to giving that place back. So in this case, it worked out because Max wasn't able to drive off into the distance. But in other situations, there have been many situations over the years, some that I've been involved with from Force India side as well, where overtaking off track and gaining an advantage was more beneficial than the penalty. Because of the track where it's really, really difficult to overtake. Think of a Singapore or a Monaco, for example. If you're able to be the car ahead, and we know that free are so beneficial, then you would have the 5 seconds isn't enough. So I do question the leniency. I know that that's been agreed, but I do question the leniency just because it's lap one, and I don't think the 5 seconds was enough.
The decision to apply a 5-second penalty to Max makes sense in terms of fairness, but it's clear that penalties like this don't always have the intended impact. In situations where overtaking is so difficult, a 5-second penalty can easily be mitigated by the advantage gained from a position on track. This is especially true on street circuits like Monaco and Singapore, where track position is king. The penalty system needs to account for this, ensuring that the punishment matches the potential advantage gained by such moves.
You don't. Well, so would you? I mean, the 10 seconds is there, and it's there in principle. You don't think that, presumably, then that the fact that it was lap one was sufficient, I think, because actually there is an element, isn't there? Max knows how to do this. He's always, despite the fact he's driving at such speeds, he is always completely aware of the advantage that he might gain from doing so. The gaming of the system. Is there a case of you reap what you sow a little bit for Max? Because had he been the car on the inside, I'm sure it would have been exactly the same. And we've seen him break so late in the past.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at these aggressive racing drivers in terms of wheel-to-wheel racing, they've all got a party trick, haven't they? Max's party trick tends to be, I'm just going to steam into the apex, and then, everyone else has got to sort it out, and that's just what I'm doing. Schumacher's trick used to be, I'm just going to swerve across on the straight. Senna used to be, I'm just going to turn across, and everyone else needs to back out of it. These are the three examples I can think of drivers who were particularly strong, and aggressive in their wheel-to-wheel combat. So yeah, I think Max tried it. He had a go. I actually think the most straightforward thing would have been the stewards to just tell him to give the place back.
Max Verstappen's racing is built on confidence and precision, often knowing exactly where to push the limits and extract every ounce of performance from his car. The penalty here was a bit of a tough call, as Max's aggressive nature is well known, and if the roles were reversed, he would have done the same thing. Some drivers have their own party tricks, like Max's dive bombing into the apex, and that's what sets them apart. But instead of penalizing moves like this, perhaps a more direct solution from the stewards, like simply giving the place back, would be a more effective way to handle these situations.
Instead of getting involved with whether it should have been 5 or 10 seconds, just ask him to give the place back. Then, he's got a race in the dirty air. It's just a normal race. Then, you don't have the situation that Bernie mentioned. So I am a bit surprised that A, they didn't ask him to do that. B, it took 2 hours and 39 minutes for us to receive the email explaining why they've been penalized, which, it's an extraordinarily long time, right? It's a lap one, turn one incident. Obviously, the penalty we knew was notified, we knew what it was, but it took a very long time to get an explanation.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the late great Charlie Whiting always did that. He said, he'd just say it would be worth your while giving the place back, whether it's the race director, whether it's the stewards directly, or whether it's even the team. I was quite surprised that Red Bull didn't just say, because he still would have. Therefore, I suppose it was a case of he'd be giving up the clean air if he dropped back in behind Oscar Piastri. So they deemed it worth the roll of the dice on this occasion. But it would be so much simpler, because we are getting bogged down, it seems, quite a lot in this conversation. Every year we're coming to these same conclusions.
I wonder if part of the reason that didn't happen was the safety car, the following safety car. So they basically had to the end of the lap before the safety car came out in order to switch positions.
Max's penalty could have been handled in a much simpler way by just asking him to give the place back. That would have let the race continue without the added stress of a time penalty hanging over him. What's even more surprising is the communication delay. Waiting over 2 hours to get an explanation for a decision made on the spot was a missed opportunity for clarity. A quicker resolution would have kept the focus on the racing instead of the penalty debate.
I don't think Red Bull or anyone really had the time to go back and review it and make a decision. Red Bull mightn't have changed their decision anyway, but probably not enough time with the next accident for race control to have got involved that quickly and said, switch the positions. And then after the safety car restart, they probably felt like the game had moved on a bit, so that wasn't quite the right time to do it as well. But from Red Bull's point of view, if they'd been able to get to that decision quickly, then obviously Max had another chance at a restart, as the safety car restarted. So he had another opportunity maybe to do something into turn one.
Yep.
So that would have definitely worked out better for them, I think. But yeah, I wonder if it was just that safety car that meant they couldn't quite get to the right point quickly enough and then didn't want to do it, whatever number of laps later that was.
Yeah, you can't swap the cars when the safety car is being deployed. And that happened, of course, because of the clash between Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly that happened just behind them.
The combination of tight timing and the safety car made Red Bull's decision quite difficult. They had no time to review the incident fully and make a move before the next crash caused the safety car to come out. In those moments, the priority was safety, and it would have been risky to push for a position swap during the safety car. If they had acted faster, Max might have had a better chance at the restart. But with the chaotic nature of the race and the following incidents, Red Bull likely felt that waiting for a clearer opportunity was the safer call. In the end, the lack of immediate action was a result of the timing challenges rather than a lack of willpower to act.